Okay, I think we are good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Witekio and Mender Yocto Masterclass. It's actually part 4. We've done this 4 times because you love it so much. Not this exact subject, always different subjects, but part 4 of the masterclass. If you want to see part 1, 2, or 3, go on to the Witekio website, or you can look on YouTube, or you can look for Joseph, who is at the Yocto Jester, and he's got things saved and retweeted. So it is available if you want to catch up with any of the other subjects we've covered. Today is all about considerations for license compliance, which has turned out to be a super popular topic and subject, which I can understand completely why if you're bringing a device to market this year, or if you have one at market and you're not sure about open source and your rights and your licensing. So today's agenda, we're going to go through things like how to create license package, what you need to know about it, software bill of materials, what to do if you don't have access to your original build sources, software auditing, and more. The order will be that Menders, so Joseph will speak first, and he's going to introduce himself, and then Conrad from Witekio will speak second. I will be here on mute because I'm here to learn, just like all of you, but I will be checking the channels. You'll see me working away because effectively at the end, you will have a chance to ask live questions. So you can ask our experts anything you want about open source licensing. Your questions are anonymous, so feel free to ask what you want within reason, and we will answer them at the end. So save them up. You can ask them on the chat on Livestorm down here, or questions on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. You can, just at us or comment and ask away, and we will be here at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to my lovely speakers to introduce themselves. Joseph, Conrad, if you want to go first, and then Joseph can take over.
Sure, can do. Hi, everyone. My name is Conrad Weimann. I'm a senior developer here at Witekio. I'm also quite involved in several open source projects, so I'm quite familiar with this lovely topic of license compliance. And I'm here to give you my insights from years and years of learnings when it comes to this.
Okay, and my name is Joseph. I'm currently serving as head of developer relations for Mender. And as Mender's main user base, I would say, is in Yocto, and I have a very strong background in Yocto. I am even like Yocto project ambassador there. And I've run quite a couple of projects that went out into the wild, so I've naturally gotten into the field of license compliance too. So I'll just share a little bit of, let's say, hands-on advice. And now I am essentially waiting for the magic to happen because I have got the first slot.
It is there. Can you see?
No, I cannot see anything. I can see a spinning wheel.
Oh, the magic of live. There you go.
Magic of live.
Yeah, I can see the slides. So you cannot see them. You got them.
Okay. So I have to present my own slides that I cannot see. Is that what you're saying?
No, the slides are there. I don't know why they're not showing for you. This is how
I mean,
I
can do that. I can do that. I can try to present without seeing my own slides, but we will all have a lot of fun because I'm making a fool of myself.
I think I can see what everyone's seeing. The slides are there. They're showing.
Can people maybe drop a few notes into the chat if there are
slides, thumbs up.
There are slides. Okay, so let me do a dirty trick. I will open my own slides to the side, and I'll tell you when to click. Okay, let's do the crazy thing. Because I mean I'm speaking to a black box at the moment.
The magic has happened. It's there. I'm sorry you can't see it.
we will manage. We will manage. PowerPoint is opening. Okay, so just so we sync. You have my about me slide at the moment. Okay, then we're good to go. So now in sync with Georgie. Again, my name is Joseph. I'm deeply involved with the Yocto project, mainly through doing advocacy. I run a lot of social media there, and I also do it for Open Embedded, which is the underpinning technology behind a lot of the Yocto project stuff. As Georgie already pointed out so lovely, I'm really, really easy to find on the internet. My moniker that I carry most of the time is the Yocto Jester. I'm under that, like, nom de guerre, under on Twitter, on Mastodon, on Instagram. Actually, I even have a TikTok account, but don't go hunting for content there. Just Google me, shoot me a mail, everything is there, and I'm usually really, really easy to find and talk to. So, click. Motivation. Why are we talking about this? Because we are talking about devices. A lot of people, and I would say the majority of developers these days is somewhere in the cloud. And cloud developers and operators, they have their stuff somewhere in a compute center, their servers, they put their software onto it and run it there. And guess what? It stays there, it's always under their control, and the customers or users only interact with the running software. And they do not actually receive the software that is running. So no distribution happens when you're in the cloud. Click, please. Whereas when you're talking about IoT, the Internet of Things, then the keyword here is things. Those are devices, and they are not put in just into a data center. They are actually handed out to customers. They are sold or shipped or whatever. They leave the area of your control, and they usually contain some form of software. And this is the key point. This, by definition, makes you a distributor, or if you use the license text term, a conveyor of software. And this is where the fun starts. Click, please. Just to make sure, we are on motivation 2 now. Okay, so why does it apply? The key is that software is distributed. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it an update. You can call it firmware. You can call it an image. You can call it an application. It really doesn't matter. You give software out to somebody, and it even doesn't matter if it's in the ROM on an SD card or through some over-the-air update, such as Mender does. You hand out software. The only nitpicky thing actually here is lawyers are not really clear on the point if it's an aggregate work, which means there are several moving parts in there that are independent, or if it's a derivative work, which means the software blob is a one thing that has to legally be treated as one. But the software is distributed, and that's why click all of the licenses that are in the open source kick in. Motivation 3. The two major consideration of all of those licenses are that you have to fulfill the things that are in licenses that you can accept for your use case, or if you cannot accept them, well, because of things that are in the licenses, then you have to do everything that is possible to actually avoid those licenses. And these are basically the two core things that I will walk you through. First thing, fulfilling the license requirements. There are one and a half major things that essentially apply to all licenses in the open source. And the one thing that literally always applies is have some form of copyright notice and the license text. There's a couple of variations here and there, but as far as I know, this literally applies everywhere. And the second half thing is source code. It depends on the exact license, but that is usually always required. You have to hand out this stuff. So click requirement 1, copyright notices and license text. You have to hand this out. How do you make sure that this is actually like passed along with the software? Because it does not mean, oh, I'm making the software and I'm tossing it at you, and here is some other kind of license text, and well, if you are interested, you can go and find it. No, the licenses actually require you to take this really out and hand it out with the software. If we go like 20 or 30 years back when those licenses were written, that was not really a problem because there was no big, or even 40 years probably, there was no big online distribution of software. You went to a shop and bought software on a CD or even on discs. All of that came into a nice box with some cover design, and a booklet was in there. So those licenses were written with those booklets in mind. They told people what to note in these booklets. So the customer bought a shrink wrap box, and the distributor was really sure everything is in there. But we're in the 2020s now, and almost everything happens online. So your build process or your creation and distribution of software have to adjust. This is where Yocto kicks in. Click, please. Yocto gives you means to include those copyright notes and license texts. This means, or how do you do it? You tell Yocto, create pseudo packages for the licenses and then install them on the target. This sounds a little bit complicated by now, but the key here is that you are actually putting the required information into the software. It is like you can't separate it out that easily anymore. You can't accidentally forget it because Yocto makes sure it always goes in. So you already have the information in your firmware blob or in your software, and then you essentially just need to add some kind of means of accessing it. You can do it in your GUI where you display the text. You can copy it out to some suitable medium. The GPL has a very funny recommendation. If you don't have a GUI, well, you can use a speaker. The GPL people suggest to use a screen reader. So maybe that's a cool thing for your next IoT thing. Click, please. If you have done that, make sure you take the next step of actually understanding what happens under the hood. This is Yocto's documentation on providing the license texts. Because I just gave you like a super short snippet to get you started, you really have to make sure you understand more. I told you these are pure text files. Pure text files are suitable for use in UI or in screen readers. I just love that idea so much. But sometimes you want a more like printable or documentish form, which is PDF these days. And guess what? There is some magic available that you can add to your Yocto build and then have a PDF created. You can find it under that link. And here's already the first announcement of my lovely co-speaker, Konrad, because he actually wrote that for you. Last item here, TLDR. The full title is TLDR Legal. It is an open information site by a company that does software composition analysis, but they have a really neat rundown of the licenses in a form that I'd say most developerish persons actually can understand. So if you run into a license that you've never seen before, make sure you check this out. Okay, click. Requirement 2. I told you we make sure to adhere to licenses that are acceptable for us. And we avoid licenses that are not acceptable for us. And why would we do that? Again, 2 core reasons why we want to avoid licenses. The one is copyleft. I don't like the nomenclature that a lot of people use here, so I'll avoid it. I'll just say copyleft might have the effect that you have to also open source your own work, which you in a lot of cases do not want to do. So you want to avoid licenses or use cases that force you to open source your own stuff. That is the one. The other one is there are licenses that require you to hand out full installation information for a software on your device. This is where the aggregate versus derivative thing kicks in. If lawyers agree that something is an aggregate, then it would be enough if you can only swap out this part. If lawyers agree that it is a derivative, then you have to provide then you have to provide information to replace each and everything in your device, all software components. So if a license brings this requirement to provide installation information, then you can't say, oh, well, technically installation happens like copy this here and then do that. No, the licenses these days are really, really clear. It means each and every script, each and every installation instruction, plus, and this is the most crucial thing, also keys. If your device needs some form of signed updates or even has a secure boot chain, you have to hand out the keys to the user to replace all of the open source pods in there. And obviously, you do not want to do this in a lot of cases. The most understandable one is because there is a security critical, I mean, in terms of not harming people, that kind of security component in there that you really want to nail down, or the not so cool reasons if you want to just like hide stuff that you did fishy in there. But in the end, it really doesn't matter. You have to avoid those licenses. Again, how do you do it? You should be able to trust your developers enough to not use all of those licenses. In reality, checking is better than trusting. At least the German saying goes like that. So Yocto can do this again for you. Click, please. This license does not enter here. I just said we can make sure those licenses do not enter. Either it means we define all acceptable licenses, like an allow list, or we restrict those that we do not want, like a block list. I'm going to present the block list approach because that is the more common one. But if you like go deeper into the license compliance rabbit hole, you might actually want to switch to allow list because it gives you even more fine-grained control. Click, please. The Yocto example is, or the Yocto way of doing this is you define an incompatible license string, and that is actually like a globbing thing. I already told you that licenses you want to avoid concerning the installation information are usually the GPL family. So AGPL, LGPL, pure GPL in the v3 incarnation. To catch all of those, you enter this thing, and you have to really look at the slides carefully. You put it into your image recipe because you want to apply this only to your image. If you would enter it into your local.conf, it would also apply to the build process. So as those tools are not being handed out by you, you're fine using them there. If you would restrict there, you just couldn't even build anymore. I have run an example build for you here, where I set incompatible licenses for an image and ran off, and it said cannot build image anymore because bash is GPL-v3. Granted, I added bash just for the sake of demonstration, but you can see Yocto/bitbake won't even allow the build to pass anymore if a license requirement violation would be detected. So I would say that is a relatively nice mechanism to catch developers that have either been sloppy or just like didn't realize it. Click again. So I already told you people want to avoid GPL-v3. So a lot of clever people walk up, usually Malain, and say, hey, if only GPL-v3 is bad, well, let's just stick to GPL-v2. And I Googled it, and I found this cool layer, GPL, meta GPL-v2, which gives me like the non-GPL-v3. I'm just going to keep using that. No, don't do it. It is outdated. It is officially deprecated. Most of the software in there, probably even all, have either known bugs and or security flaws. If you ship this stuff, I personally say that you are actively harming your customers. Do not do this. You can quote me there. Okay? We're good. Click, please. The last thing I want to point out is, sure, we have talked about putting license text and information into the image. And a lot of the licenses might require you to also provide source. You don't have to do this with the device, but you are required to provide it for each point of software that you actually handed out. You can't just say if somebody walks up, hey, I have this device, give me source. Then you can't just say, yeah, this is the current state. Have fun with that. No, they can tell you, this is the version I have. Give me the source corresponding to that version. So in a nutshell, you really want a software bill of materials that matches each build, that tells you, okay, if I handed this one out, then this and this and this went in there. So the customer is allowed or is entitled to get this and this and this. Yocto gives you a mechanism for that. because Yocto has a mechanism for almost everything. And it gets started with inheriting the create SPDX class, which has been, I think, driven mostly forward by Josh Watt. So Josh, thanks a lot for this invaluable contribution to Yocto. And this gives you like an SPDX style SBOM to get started with. From there, you can fine tune more according to your needs. Does it include source? Do you want it prettified? Do you want it compacted or whatever? It goes a little bit beyond the scope that I'm presenting today. I've included you a number of ideas here to get started with links into the Yocto documentation, and you can make your own way from there to match your distribution process, because everything that we have talked about here is essentially not a software problem. It is a process problem. If we're talking about license compliance, then it means your organization and your development flow have to adjust to the requirements that your software brings, and your company just has to like adopt those workflows, and then you're essentially good. Click, please. Conclusion. I started with the cloud because the cloud usually does not have those problems. Embedded devices, connected embedded devices, bring really, really special challenges compared to the cloud, because you are sending out software and you are sending out numerous versions of software. So license compliance is really important. Integrating these requirements and these understandings into your build and deployment infrastructure is what makes your or gives you mechanisms to really keep track of that. And Yocto, I would say, is the big and best building block that you have there at your disposal. And why am I talking about this? Because, yeah, well, Mender supports this all directly through using our layer at metamender.com. Click, please. I think that only tells you where you can find us and me. And click, please, again. Thank you. Questions we take at the end, as you all know. And with that, I hand over to Konrad, and we'll see you in like 20 minutes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. Now let's get on with the more interesting topics here. So Joseph basically covered the basics, but now you can think about the other usual cases that you have. Like, for instance, you're using the Linux kernel, and you have your custom patches. In Yocto, these are normally not part of your sources that you would actually give out to your customers. They are separate files within your build system. So also for this, Yocto does have some out-of-the-box experience. It's called Archiver, which just helps you having all these local patches that the build system applies to the original sources being stripped out, so you can actually package them up and make them available. And that's the most important part. I can't stress it enough. You have to have, as Joseph mentioned it, have these versioned. So for every version, you have to hand out the correct package. The easiest way to do that, after including all this, is to build up a web presence. Make it public. It needs to be free of charge. That's very important. But what you can do, you can apply registration board. That's in accordance to the licenses. And while you're at it, you can also place your SBOMs there. Then everything is set, and people, if they are interested in it, can download it for free. And that basically covers the most essential obligations that you have to fulfill when it comes to using open source software. But what about the lovely case that you have a supplier and he's giving you no sources? No sources is always a bad thing. But there are also more process-oriented ways how to deal with it. First of all, you have to insist on SBOMs. These are very essential in modern day software development, and your obligation would be then to publish them along with your normal release, just as another artifact people can reference to. At least what you get out of it is, what license does this component have? Is there any impact on other components? Because out of an SBOM, you can also extract the relationships between components. And that's pretty much the basics of license compliance here. Additionally, it would be cool if you can insist that your supplier also signs conformity documents. For instance, he confirms that he's not using, like what Joseph told you, AGPL, GPL in version 3 and on, because otherwise you could insist, as you are the main user for now, that he also hands out all the building scripts and stuff like this, and then you can easily replicate it all yourself. I guess in nowadays it's simply not a thing that people should sign conformity documents. For instance, if you look at automotive industry, it's basically a must-have before you can even make a delivery. And if that all doesn't work, all you can say is don't use it. Otherwise, you're getting into trouble. Because you are the one that actually is shipping to a customer the software. So from a customer's perspective, it's you're at fault here. So if you don't want to get into further trouble, either insist on these documents and SBOMs or look for alternatives. I guess there are plenty around for most of the things that are now part of modern day software development. So what else you need to think about? Further steps along the way. First of all is make everything as much as possible machine readable. So start with your own software and embed all the metadata of licensing using this very nice project of Linux Foundation, SPDX, into each file header. Then you can use like tools. For instance, I referenced here reuse tool, which comes for free, and you can basically extract all the licenses from all your software, machine readable, and get reports out of it without any additional effort. What else? Now comes the not so fun part. You have to audit all that stuff. Also, luckily, there are a few tools. I mentioned only a few. There are way more around that can help you here. Basically, you have to build up an inventory of all your software and the relationship between all these software packages. Out of this, you can basically generate a tree, and at the end of the tree, there's your image. And this image in the end has to be compliant, because that's what you are handing out as part of your software composition. And when it comes to auditing, please be careful when it comes to additional clauses. I named here two, which were quite scary for me as I read them the first time. One is common clause, which is normally fairly well hidden along other license texts. It basically tells you that if you start using the software for money, or you're just giving it out, for instance, you're selling support for software or something, even under this case, you're not allowed to use any of the software package that comes with this exception or this additional clause here. The second example I named here is zlib. Zlib has this funny clause that if you alter just a tiny bit of the source code, you can't name this package zlib anymore. You have to find a different name. So basically, you can name it zlibng, but even though this would be likely shut down by lawyers, because zlib is like more or less like a trademark nowadays. So you have to invent your own name, which makes it then super complicated just because you patched something very tiny. So please, please be on the lookout for these extra special clauses here, because they're not so common. And also, this is one of my favorite examples. It's the SQLite license. So basically, SQLite is public domain, so there is no copyright involved, but this likely doesn't make lawyers happy, because public domain is kind of a hard to grasp concept in like lawyers' terms. So they came up with this lovely, you may be good and not evil. I'm not quite sure which company on this planet actually can give out this statement or even fulfill the other two clauses. So also be careful about this here. If you ever encounter like statements like these, your best alternative would be looking for alternatives instead of using it, because it's absolutely a legal gray zone. So, and Joseph might don't want to hear that, but Yocto's licenses metadata it's a good start, but it's sadly not as reliable as you may think it is. It's for a good reason. It's by design, just because there are so many factors influencing what license, like the outcome of the package is. For instance, different configuration parameters might heavily change the overall license here, just because some tiny piece of code, which is, for instance, GPL2, all of a sudden is linked in, and then your formerly MIT license composition changes completely to MIT and GPL, which renders it a GPL in the end. So please make sure that you're using the tools just in case you have like a very complex package. Use these audit tools to make sure that the license that Yocto project as a good starting point offers you, if that's still correct for your setup. There is sadly no one-fits-all solution. You have to apply it on a project or image level basis. And now that you know what kind of licenses you have, you need to know what kind of obligations do you actually have to fulfill. The good thing is there are certain initiatives out there which gives you good material for free. I name here one is the Ossettle group. They have a checklist when it comes to like using and open sourcing software. They are a very good starting point. Please make sure you have a look there for free available, and they give you a very good overview what to take care of. And maybe just in brief, because I have to really stress that one more time, be sure that GPL v3 is getting you into trouble because of this clause with all the building scripts, which renders is sadly pretty much unusable for most of the commercial projects that I know of. And as we are now leaving more and more the development zone, please make also sure to involve everybody else in your company. There's so much stuff when it comes to license compliance. Everybody can have a task in. For instance, the To-Do group, which is another very nice organization, hands out something called OSPO Career Path, which is like learning material, how to set up a proper open sourcing process in your company. And there's stuff involved, like, as I mentioned, for instance, making all your license data somehow readable so you can just aggregate them into a report on an image basis. Then there needs to be someone with the legal background that can actually define which licenses are acceptable in your context. And then there needs to be someone who signs that off, who actually is in charge of like liability and stuff like this. And all these tiny building blocks, I think if you keep reading about it and thinking about it, it's good to have. It might not be that you need another position in your company for each of these blocks, but please make sure that you've talked about it in your project context. And just to give you as my last slide, a very brief rule of thumb, what I learned so far is don't ever even think about using static linking in any of your code if it involves open source software. Check the compatibility before merging code. So compatibility, I mean like license-wise. Use as many tools which are super nice to have and are pretty mature in your CI as early as possible in your development stage. And as Joseph already mentioned, you might want to prefer permissive over copyleft licenses, insist on SBOMs, and in the end, define responsibilities. And that basically concludes my part for today.
Thank you so much. So before we get on to the questions, which they've been pouring in, which is great, I just have to very quickly do the sales part, I know, but it's a Witekio and Mender webinar. So obviously Joseph talked about Mender, and Witekio and Mender are partners. We work closely with them to help with all things over-the-air updates. And Witekio can help you with all things Yocto, whether it be long-term maintenance support, porting updates, all the rest of it, as well as the host of things that you can see here. Anything embedded for your device, we can help with for software. So optimization, migration, security, connectivity, GUI, etc., etc. You know it, and we're here to help you. I just want to say two things before I start with the questions. One, Joseph, thank you so much. You said please after you said click on every single one. I love a polite person. That's like heart, heart, heart. That was great. Every time you were like click please, which is fab. Two,
You know me
professionalism.
personally. You know me personally, and I sometimes come over a bit harsh, but I think at the end I'm a really nice person.
Yeah, you're a big softie, and also, guys, everybody watching, imagine doing a live webinar with like not being able to see the slides. You can't see the magic. What professionalism! And Conrad and Joseph, they know each other as well. They work together on the Yocto project a lot. So, and obviously together with Witekio and Mender, which is why they've got a bit of banter going. So yes, so that's why they seem so comfortable, which is great. So I'm going to crack on with the questions now, guys. I can see I'm looking over here because I can see another laptop where questions are coming in, but I'm going to start with everyone here. So the first one is, and again, Joseph or Conrad, whichever one feels comfortable to answer, or if you both have a bit to say, then that's great. So the first one talks about how archives product by an archive class may be used for reproducing a build. As far as I know, they have an incompatible format with the content of the build/downloads folder.
This is true. I can agree to that. They are fairly incompatible to like the normal ways of how Yocto is building like recipes and packages and so on. And I don't think that was the intentional scope of this archiver class. It was more like stripping out basically the original sources plus patches into a format which you then can ship out to your customers. There might be the possibility to hack around like stuff, but I think there's no out-of-the-box experience here, as far as I know.
Okay. For everybody asking, questions are just coming in quickly. The slides will be sent to you after this. So anybody who wants the links that Joseph or the sources that Conrad said, it will be with you like after the event along with the recording, so you can watch it again. Okay, so the second question talks about the LIC topic. LIC? Is there any way to add custom open source and/or a free software license to the Yocto compliance mechanism?
Yes, there is. You can look it up. Let me quickly, maybe Joseph can fill up the gap while I'm Googling for 30 seconds. There's just a tiny variable that you need to set to add custom licenses to your build.
Okay. Essentially, as far as I know, it makes it a proprietary license because proprietary does not essentially mean closed. Proprietary just means that it is yours. And Conrad is right. I also don't know the variable from memory, but it is one statement that you put in that says this is under proprietary XYZ, which is my license, which can also be a free and open source license, and then the usual tracing works again. Did you find it?
Yeah, it's called license under underline path. Just Google for it. Many layers make use of this. It's actually a pretty cool mechanism that you can apply your custom license templates and directly reference them in any recipe that you have in your Yocto board.
Cool. Another question talks about, does presence of GPL v3 packages on the roof TFS is in conflict of the secure boot? What should we do if we really require packages licensed GPL version 3 and secure boot because of some security requirements like IEC 62443?
So maybe I jump in here. The GPL v3 requires you that the user is able to exchange an alternative copy of this GPL v3 code by their compilation, including all the necessary build scripts and stuff like this. In the end, if you're talking about like just securing like the boot chains or bootloader and the actual kernel, that might be still a thing that you can have like GPL v3 in your root FS. If you're doing stuff like measured boot, it's an instant showstopper here, I think, because then somebody puts in a foreign component, which then should be labeled by the system as compromised. So in conclusion, from my experience, any GPL v3 code is fairly incompatible with modern day secure root chain things that you encounter along the way. if you require like really GPLv3 code in your software composition, you might consider that you might ask for a commercial license. Or you can speak to the project maintainer. Maybe there's a way that you can license your copy on the different terms. That's always a possibility. In this case, just feel free to reach out to the actual project maintainer about of the code that you are using. That's the best way I can give you the best advice.
I also want to jump in on the topic. This is why I stressed the aggregate versus derivative earlier in my presentation, because if the lawyers would agree that any part in there of a is GPLv3 makes this a derivative, then you would actually be required to be enabled to replace each and every piece. So, like I said, this is not set in stone yet. Lawyers are arguing over that, but that's a real risk. One thought model that I want to offer is GPLv3 requires you to replace software, but it does not say you have to be able to replace each and every software in each and every state. So again, I am not a lawyer, but take this as a thinking model. Whenever somebody wants to replace the GPLv3 software on your secured device, then you have to like enter a code or flick a switch, set a jumper, whatever, that essentially puts this board or this device into development mode, which wipes your specific application and gives the customer an open board that they can do whatever they want with. Just your IP is not there anymore. Again, lawyers are arguing over that, but it might be a way out of it. Or again, you can sign your application and the application checks out, is there one of my dependencies like exchanged? If not, well then I'm just gonna stop working. If it is ethically correct is on another piece of discussion. But I mean, there's a lot of questionable things going on, and especially by the users of open source. So take that with a pinch of salt.
Okay. Anytime someone says, I am not a lawyer, I pay attention because they're going to give you something interesting. That's it. And obviously, this was one of the very first questions, so I'm sure that you've covered a lot of it, but I just thought it'd be interesting to sum up. So someone's asking, is there any royalty that needs to be paid for leveraging Yocto in commercial product development?
Clear no.
No,
there's nothing more to say on that. There is nothing more to say on that. Yocto, as it is on yocto.project.org, is free to use.
Okay.
If you build stuff on it and go for world domination, then you might reach world domination and you don't have to pay us.
Okay.
But still, every money donation is highly welcome by the Yocto project.
Throw money. Throw money.
Okay, so there you go. So it's technically it's free to use, but obviously it'd be nice if you're making a lot of money off of a device to give some money to the Yocto. I got you. Okay, your short answer, you just like no. It's like is that it? No, nothing else, guys. No, no. That's good. I like a short answer. Okay. Okay, something else. How to get a CVE checklist in Yocto. I see that CVE check.bb class is broken from Yocto thud.
Yeah, maybe Yocto FAT is broken. Let's label it like this. In the more recent builds, CVE class is working as expected. But as you can imagine, this is very much a moving target. But you are free to backport stuff from later branches to your FAT fork. That would be an idea to keep in mind. Also because FAT is highly outdated. I mean, I think from my experience, there's more to worry about than CVEs when you're still building on Yocto FAT. Okay. But that's just my personal experience and opinion.
Jason's raising his eyebrows.
Oh, no. I just find it very, very helpful if two speakers essentially agree. So if you are shipping stuff on thud, well, then you have a completely different problem. The one thing that I could read differently in the question is broken from Yocto third. If that would suggest that it is broken since Yocto third, then I would be highly surprised, because I actually have used it on Kirkston successfully. Oh, my desk is doing things. But I would say the CVE check class, it is there. It is known to work as expected, with the slight addition that the expectation is not that it gives you a bulletproof CVE audit, because that's not what it's for. It's a starting point, as Conrad would say. Okay. But it definitely works as expected in Kirkston.
Okay. Joseph, this one is definitely for you. So someone's asking again, just a quick explanation of how Mender helps with license compliance. So a little bit more information.
It does not per se make you license compliant. The key is Mender is a software product, and instead of requiring others to do the packaging and make sure that the licensing and everything match, we are doing it as a convenience in Mender already. So if you are concerned with license compliance, which you should be, and you are using Mender, then there's nothing more that you have to look into. You just pull it in. We are really making sure the licenses are all up to date. We are actually even using a custom one. It's all in there, and it helps you in terms of, we do the work for you, but it is no magic bullet that makes you license compliant. That's the key, I would say.
Okay. Just replying to someone about where they can find the recording of this. As I said, it will be on Witekio's YouTube, but we'll also send it to you on email. So don't worry, guys. I know we're covering a lot of good stuff and you don't want to miss it. Another question, how FOSS delivery is related to licensing and software bill of materials?
You? Me?
Either? Any?
I'm still thinking about the question. If it means how to be like open source compliant in terms of licensing, SBOMs are pretty much an essential part, as I mentioned earlier, plus all the archives and all the necessary copyleft sources, and then you're pretty much good to go. If that's not what you meant, then surely you have to specify the question a bit, I think.
Okay. Perfect. If I won't say name because we'll keep it anonymous, but if you want something more specific, just let us know and we can answer it. Okay. Another one. Oh, guys, there's loads. This is great. Okay. What proprietary license should we use for device trees that include vendor GPL2 source files for custom boards?
If it's GPL, you have to stick with GPL. That's like the viral effect of copyleft licenses. There's no way around. So if it's GPL v2 only, then you have to stick to, as the name implies, to GPL v2. If it's GPL v2 or later, then you're free to relicense it to GPL v3. But I'm sure you don't want that. So most, like 99.9% of the cases, it's GPL v2 that you have to stick to for all device trees. That's sadly a fact.
One thing to add, I would have worded it more brutal. I would have said, what proprietary license you can pick, and the answer is none, because of GPL v2. Two things to consider. Again, it's two is always my number for explanations. If you have magic in your device tree that you do not want people to know, then you have a different problem, not a license. That is the one. The second one is the people in charge of GPL say that if a non-substantial snippet that comes from GPL code is incorporated in something else, then there might be possibilities to treat it as non-substantial for the resulting thing. There is discussions on that. I did not say that. I was just thinking loud now. I do not suggest it for device trees because a device tree is almost essentially ever made up of substantial pieces. Yes, that was the second thing.
He's not a lawyer, but none.
No.
Yeah, I mean, basically for everything which incorporates in the kernel, it's GPL v2. That's basically the fact.
Okay. Amazing. Another question is talking about, okay, so you guys have mentioned GPL version 3 and AGPL as licenses to avoid. Are there any more licenses worth mentioning that you should avoid?
Oh yeah, there are plenty. I can name a few. For instance, there is this lovely EPL, and there are certain variations of CC, Creative Commons with non-commercial background that you simply want to avoid. I can post you like the full list that I used for years now in the chat.
Good. Yeah, that's great. And also, as I said, slides will be sent out. So guys, if there's anything that you want to add, Conrad or Joseph, that you are seeing, just get in touch. And when I send it to people, I can add it to the list as well. Okay, someone else is asking, can I call? It might be worth actually you guys looking at the chat to see the exact wording that they're using, because I'm going to read it out. And it's like, can I call bracket fork, bracket Excel, bracket a GPL v2 program like some busy boy tool for my proprietary CC++ application to not make my application GPL version 2? So like I said, it might be good.
Sure, you can. You just have to make sure that your proprietary app doesn't use any code in your proprietary app scope. So if we're talking about software, it's like a process. Within your process, there shouldn't be any code incorporated which is under different than your proprietary license, or doesn't give you like the flexibility such as permissive licensed MIT code, for instance. So this doesn't include like foreign functions that you call out of shared libraries. If these shared libraries are coming under LGPL, for instance, then you can easily use them in your proprietary application. That's not a problem. Are they licensed under GPL2 without the L in the front? Then you have a problem, because then the like viral effect already again comes into place. It's a bit tricky. Just in case, if you're unsure, please consult a lawyer which is specialized in this case, because there are so many like stepping stones and gray areas that you have to consider. There's no one fits all answer to this, sadly.
Okay.
I have to jump in here, because the very specific thing here is the exec, and you are running a standalone binary in its own process. And the GPL actually has a couple of considerations in public for that, and those are, as far as I know, again, because I am not a lawyer. I think I've said that a number of times.
Not a lawyer.
First is you use the binary or the other process only through its API or interfaces that are meant for public use. Example, you cannot patch a GPL v2 thing to expose internal structures or whatever through some shared memory and then grab into there and say, oh, but I forked it or execed it. No, it does not work, because then you have tight coupling. So example, but if you run just bash as it is to do some shell scripting and then return, that might be acceptable, because that's the original intent of bash and it is used in its intended way. So that might be fine. The second thing to consider, though, is it is only allowed if it is not an integral part of your application. So if your whole application would not do anything or nothing useful without that forked thing, then your application could be considered a derivative work, because it derives directly from the capabilities of that binary that you're running, and then you will probably also not get away with it. But for like a subsystem that just provides some additional benefit, example, you can have a custom tool that just generates data, gathers data, puts it into a database, does a lot of processing, and that's its core functionality. And then you add a button that just takes all of this and stuffs it into GNU-plot. That would be almost certainly fine, because GNU-plot is meant to ingest data and produce some visualization. and then intended use case plus not core functionality. That should be fine. Example. Thanks.
Okay, I think this is the last question, guys. If there's any that we haven't answered, then or anything that you really want to know, put it in the chat and I can check with the speakers. But the last one is, in the case of the GPL version 3 and Secure Boot, can you not just offer the possibility to replace the product with an unlocked version?
You can.
You can.
I have to agree here. That's also a possibility, even though it's another way that you have to cover in your processes when designing a product. Or you have to come up with a second line of hardware people can use, which is basically unlocked. So there are like other factors that you have to consider when making this decision. But it's an option. I agree to it.
And that's why I say license compliance is not a technical problem; it's a process problem.
Okay. We will go, but one last one, because someone cheekily just got it in, and I don't like to leave people waiting. Any opinions on a license that uses BSD 3 clause?
And a license that uses BSD 3 clause, or a license that is BSD 3 clause, because the former is like, don't touch it. It is a license I don't know. If a license is BSD 3 clause, then I would say it should be fine. The 3 clauses are retain copyright information, put out license, and you have on BSD, I think you have to note that you modified it. Is that the 3rd clause, Konrad? Am I right?
Conrad is Googling. I can see.
No, you should not endorse or promote that you are using software by the original author. That's the 3rd clause in BSD 3.
Then I would say it's good. Just don't say you're using it.
Yeah, basically provide the copy, the license text, and that's pretty much it. The only valid obligation which comes with BSD 3 clause. I'm actually quite happy with BSD 2 and 3 clause. So maybe there's a catch to it I don't see, but I've been happy with for years with this one here.
Very good. Well, you got that one. You snuck it in. We did it. It's all good. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we will round up here. But first of all, let me just tell you, people are asking where can we find the first 3 brilliant Yocto Mender websites. Yocto Masterclass by Witekio and Mender. That's the mouthful. You can find them on our YouTube. You can find them on the Witekio website, as I said, or you can follow the @Yocto Jester, and he's reposted a lot of them. The recording will be sent to you with a link, along with all of Conrad's Do Not Touch These License list and the actual slides. You can get all of Joseph's lovely references and links, etc. So that will be with you in the next week or so. But until then, if you must rewatch this because you've had such a good time watching Joseph say, "I am not a lawyer," then it will be available on our YouTube. So feel free to go through. The last thing I've got to say is, guys, thank you so much, Joseph, Conrad, you're superstars. Thank you for coming on your holiday to come and talk to everyone about Yocto. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone watching.
Yeah, thank you too.
And forget that I'm not a lawyer.
Not a lawyer. Okay. Bye, guys. Have a lovely day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.